you took the picture, but let me introduce Alan, please, very briefly. Um, Alan has a wonderful title here. It's called Our Renewables Saving the Planet. And the planet is key here because we get a distorted view from California all the time. They want to shut down their nuclear plants and just put solar panels all over the place. And that might be nice for if they can deal with the duck uh, uh, similar plan where they get a lot of energy just at supper time and for hopefully still some sunlight. But the planet is key here because this is what we're all concerned about. This is why the hurricanes are getting more intense and the ocean is warming up because we need to deal with the planet. And I emphasize this, and I'm so glad that Alan is including that in his title. To get us over the hangups over the first slide, I think it's just fine. I would love Alan to tell us a little bit about how he took the picture. And I understand he likes to go flying and has done so occupationally for quite a few years. So give us a wee bit of your background there as you're getting into it, Alan, and tell us about your love of airplanes as well as your interest in renewables.
I've been a pilot in an airplane nut since as a child. And it would take just way too much time to talk about.
No, 2 sentences, all you need.
Yeah. I've been flying airplanes since I was 14 years old, and I'm no longer actively a pilot, but I fly along with other people right now, and I was an aircraft insurance adjuster for 19 years.
That's key.
This particular picture on the first presentation slide was downstate Illinois. As I was flying along one day, I came upon this rather large solar field, which actually is not that huge by modern standards. So that's why the tippy thing, I lowered my wing down or was circling around it and took a picture, and that's why it looks all tippy. So with that, my topic here is are renewables saving the planet? And I'll just comment that when first given this subject, my attitude is why aren't we 100% nuclear fission power? That's my goal. I used to have a newspaper column in the Rock River Times called Mr. Green Car, where I wrote about green transportation things. And one of the very last columns that I wrote before I kind of wrapped it up was our future energy. And I had come to the conclusion while driving along down Interstate 39 one time when it was a cloudy day, very cloudy day. Solar panels weren't working and the wind turbines weren't turning. And I was thinking, oh my, this just doesn't work all the time. That was a revelation. And another day I was driving out of Chicago, having been to the Chicago Auto Show, and you're looking all the buildings and all that's going on driving out of Chicago. And you say, there is no way that renewable energy is going to be able to power all this. It's just impossible. So I kind of self-converted myself to the belief in fission power. And shortly after that, I attended a PLATO class of Richard's and developed a deeper insight into how fusion is really important. So fission.
Good.
Fusion. I'm not a pro-fusion person.
No. Okay.
But at this point in time, anyway, nonetheless, so I've kind of cast a side eye towards wind and solar as being viable sources the further I've gone along, because their erratic nature and some other issues involved in them. But I'm not going to go into a big long diss on wind and solar here. We're going to analyze here quickly whether they're doing any good or not. That's the point. And I got to say that last week's presenter, Ryan Pickering, has in other sessions, as well as last week's, brought up a point that renewables are a good interim, and we shouldn't just throw them out because of their disadvantages. That fission power is not going to be coming online at 100% supply of our power anytime soon. That's the short story. So let's just pop through a few slides here and get the show rolling. The first couple I've stolen directly from Lou Harnish here. This one, let's see if I can. I'm goofing myself up here. Is you look at, see where my pointer is. So we're looking at renewable energy sources, and then here it's further broken down. It's solar and hydroelectric and wind and the others. I'm of the opinion that we're only going to talk about solar and wind in this particular episode, because hydroelectric is built out as about as far as it's going to go. It's got its downsides when it comes to clogging up rivers and ruining land and disturbing aquatic life. But there's just worldwide about as much hydro is going to be built as can be done. Canada and some of the Norwegian or Norway and other places have quite a bit of hydropower and very clean power sources. In the United States, the Pacific Northwest has an abundance of hydropower, and a little bit here in Wisconsin as well. But there's not going to be more of it. So it's, as our energy needs grow, hydro is not going to be able to step in and up its game all that much. On the bottom end of the scale, we have biomass. We have, burning farm gases, wood, and other things. And these still have a problem in that they're still emitting CO2, or not all that truly renewable or clean. They're renewable to an extent, but the circle of life is not really good. So we're not going to talk about them. And also, they're just a really tiny slice of the energy output anyway. I would probably say that wood is doing way more than though, because so many people heat their homes with wood. It's something on the order of 5%. So that's kind of significant, but fortunately, that's not the way we're going to go. So next slide. Okay, here again, I've stolen this chart from Lou's presentation, and it shows that, is this just US or is this worldwide, Lou? That renewable energy in all its forms, which includes hydro, is generating just 12% of our energy at this time. And the big dirty ones, petroleum and natural gas, are the bigger chunks of the pie here. Solar's at 12%, wind's at 27% of the pie, and that's the significant. Are they doing anything? So we'll save the conclusion to the end.
Those two pie charts are very similar.
Yeah,
and they are US. They are US pie charts, not the world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but it's kind of the same throughout the world. It varies from country to country. Some countries have a lot of geothermal and hydropower. Others have a lot of coal. In one example, I didn't get a slide of it from the energy map thing, but one South Australian territory has a ton of solar, but every night they get electricity from their coal burning neighbor. It's like they're listed as kind of greenish on the chart, and their neighbor is like dark brown. So it's like it shows the downsides of the solar thing without having any kind of storage capacity.
There are two low price offers in
So I had happened upon a program on PBS here recently that was an older workshop from UW Madison. So I got to read his name. Michael Arnold. Does anybody know Michael Arnold? Who's with the engineering department at UW? Well, he was doing a program about the declining price of solar and how that's come about. And he talked some about solar technology as well. But the crux of it is why there's been a huge solar expansion, particularly industrial scale solar, is the price of solar panels has plummeted. Basically, it goes down, the cost of solar panels goes down about 20% for each doubling of capacity. So the more they make, the cheaper it gets. And so it's gotten to where like Alliant Energy can buy and install solar panels and actually make a profit at it. They're getting down to 9 cents a kilowatt for their costs, their own wholesale costs. And if they're subsidized, it gets down to like 5 cents per kilowatt. And of course, they're selling it for more than that to most people. So that's why it keeps going down, and it's starting to expand more and more. It's the economics of it. There's just
but that's very misleading, Alan, as you know that is installed energy. It does not include anything but the panels themselves, and it also doesn't account for the real delivery of energy. It's only for what's called installed capacity. And right. It's the only fair way to look at that is for a few hours around noon on June the 21st.
Yep.
It's going to be less than that all the rest of the year.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they figured out how to make money at it, so that's why we have more of it.
Yeah, if I can just add a comment. I just saw an article that solar can make money now, at least without subsidies. They can, although that may not include the cleanup down the road, but they can make money now because of that very slide you showed, Alan. The price is dropping like a rock.
Well, here's a slide I picked up off the internet that shows solar capacity, which brings up Richard's point exactly, that capacity is measured and always advertised when the utilities are patting themselves on the back for having new solar capacity. There's one time when the sun is shining directly down on the panel on a very bright day. It's the only time, and that's what capacity is measured in. But here you see that China has got 1,453 gigawatts of capacity. A little later on, I'll get to a slide here where we'll talk about the actual electricity generated. I find it interesting. In U.S. is second. We're way behind China in this, although we almost exclusively have Chinese solar panels. And then Brazil, oddly enough, is right up there at number 3. And Germany, who I thought would be a little higher, is even behind India. So these statistics come from about 2022. Almost everything you find is from 2022. There's not, sometimes you find something from 2023. So it's just a familiar scene of some relatively small wind turbines. They get a lot bigger. They're also designing them to float offshore and other sorts of places where drilling down doesn't matter anymore. Okay, here's our capacity. China has 440 gigawatts of capacity, and in 2023 they generated their solar or their wind power generated 886 terawatts, and you see the numbers there for the U.S. generated 425 terawatts of power, about 10% of U.S. power, and Brazil was number 3. I didn't track down Brazil's numbers. I also found a note that says that Denmark makes 55% of their power via wind, but Denmark being a rather small country, it doesn't amount to a whole lot of terawatts. But it is interesting. Anybody here actually been to Denmark and seen the many turbines they have? And most of them are offshore, aren't they? Because they have relatively shallow seas around Denmark. I believe most of them are offshore.
I'm sorry. You can't possibly mean terawatts, right?
That's terawatts. Yep. That
Can't possibly be terawatts. So there must be some mistake in that. The whole world capacity is about a couple of terawatts. Maybe you mean megawatts.
That's the number. That's the amount generated.
That should be lower than capacity,
And
it's much higher.
how can the amount generated be 1,000 times the capacity?
Well, the way I'm interpreting the numbers that I came across is that you have, say, one wind turbine that's got 1 megawatt of capacity. Over 1 hour, it could produce 1 megawatt. And then you take over the course of 365 days, how many watts it cranked out altogether, going 24, you know, say if it runs.
Maybe you mean terawatt hours.
Yeah, that could be where it's terawatt hours.
Something which is
should be
the
in
difference
there.
between power and amount of energy generated. So
Yeah, I probably should have put the hours in there.
yeah, because otherwise the power the whole world uses just a couple of terawatts of power, so it's not possible to have generated that much. But maybe it's something else. But it's not.
We'll just put that H in there right now.
Enough. Okay.
I've been on a cruise in Scandinavia, and as you approach the port of Copenhagen, there's a forest of turbines in the ocean, in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of them in the water, probably Sweden as well, but talking about getting close to Copenhagen. I wonder whether they are a problem for navigation, but that's another matter, of course.
Well, that maybe brings us down to the last bullet point here, which is someone I don't know who estimated we would need 1.25 million wind turbines to supply all the U.S. electrical needs. And I would assume that would presume that there would be some sort of storage capacity to tide you over through the no wind periods. But that's a lot of wind turbines poking up into the sky. And I'm not a big fan of wind turbines just from the one and only standpoint of the red blinking lights on the top of them ruining my night sky. So okay, and so here's where we come a little closer to getting down to things. This is from a U.S. Department of Energy source that per kilowatt hour, for every kilowatt you put into your electric car, if you're running on coal, it's going to be 2.3 pounds of CO2, and you can see the other numbers there. Natural gas is considerably lower than coal, not less than half, and oddly, petroleum is even worse than burning coal. And we'll go to the next slide where there's some accumulated numbers here. So this is in the US from 2022. Natural gas produced 1.7 trillion metric tons of CO2. And because natural gas is used far more than coal in generating power, it actually produces more CO2 than coal does. And petroleum source power is, I wouldn't call it insignificant, but it's considerably lower than the other two. So that's a lot of stuff pumped into the atmosphere. It's basically incomprehensible. That's why I kind of like the previous slide here, where you just get, you can kind of more wrap your head around 1 kilowatt, and you can kind of visualize 2.3 pounds of CO2, although you can't actually see it, but it's more numbers you can wrap your head around. And
What's interesting is coal and petrol are almost identical.
Yeah.
From that slide, and natural gas is better, but boy, is this this slide you have showing, Alan, is it including just the whole US? It is US, but is it
yeah,
include,
it's just
is it
US.
no,
It's
my,
not-
my,
it's
my
not the whole-
question, my question is it the grid, or is it all of primary energy? I mean, is it just the grid, or beyond that?
I believe it's all just the grid.
Okay. Well,
I didn't read the whole report that it was attached to, so I don't know for a fact what it is. But I think that this stuff is all relative. You can extrapolate this out to the whole world. I mean, wherever they're, in Hawaii they burn petroleum, and other countries, Germany, they're burning coal, and South Australia, and China's trying to wean themselves off of it. So it brings me to basically my concluding slide, and then I'm gonna quit showing things here. So getting to the question, the topic of this particular discussion, is it doing any good? And basically you have to, as much as it hurts, you got to say yes. For every pound of CO2 that is not generated by a combustible source, it helps the planet. Is it going to save us completely if we stay on this path? Probably not. We really need to get to 100% clean power. But as Ryan pointed out, it's technically and politically difficult to just flip a switch and have fission power take over. Everything from regulations to financing to technology to human factors. Like he quoted, we needed to go 100% fission power. We'd have to have 400,000 trained people, and they're just not out there to run that right now. So it's going to be a ways off, and wind and solar seem to be really popular right now, with spending taxpayers' dollars to help out industry bring it about. So I guess we're doing something about it. So from there we can discuss this, and I'm gonna get my slideshow out of here. Okay, so we're back to looking at people's faces. So what are your comments on this? I guess I just personally have to assume yes, it is sort of saving the planet.
What if you just looked at the recent past? If you look, how much have we, what have we achieved in the last 2 or 3 years from renewable energy? And the graphs I've seen show a plateau, that there's no sign that we've accomplished much of anything with renewables lately. Yeah, we've gotten some money out of Washington. We've got some federal supports that make it look cheaper. But what have we done in terms of emissions? And it doesn't seem, it seems a total plateau. It doesn't seem that recent history has accomplished anything.
Well, you know, you look at that one slide with all the terawatt hours that were generated by wind alone, and you know, you just got to say that if every one of those was used, it deferred burning something else for the most part. So, because fission power tends to go steadily along, it doesn't fluctuate up and down all that much. So wind and solar are competing mostly against natural gas, and are occasionally curtailed, sometimes greatly, but it's a weird battle on the grid system over this kind of stuff. But then you have countries like Denmark there, who are really committed to being as clean as they can. They would probably love to have the hydro of their neighbors to the north, but they don't have much for mountains that I know of. So they don't have that. So any other comments on this?
Yes, I have comments. I'm afraid that if we choose a solution and put a lot of money into it and kid ourselves that it's doing the best we can, it takes away from other better alternatives. And it then creates resistance to change because we've invested in infrastructure. So I see a danger in that if we invest a lot of public policy and a lot of public hope and basically indoctrinate people that this is a good solution, when in fact it doesn't really buy us very much time. It doesn't buy us a lot of the remediation. And so in that sense, I'm against it. I can see that we can live with it. But I think that we need to really develop the idea in the public's mind that this is a temporary solution and that we need to be working very actively toward better solutions. That's just my feeling. Yes.
I'd say I'd agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Lou.
Thanks. Dottie, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but well, you have to understand that renewables are predicted to grow. The IEA, International Energy Agency, is predicting more growth, and Alan was showing some graphs about the cost going down. It is low-hanging fruit right now, and sometimes we got to take every bit of low-hanging fruit for the moment, but we have to qualify it and say, hey, this is not going to last forever. We got to think farther down the road. And but it's doing, and Texas and California have benefited, especially with energy storage. They've really gotten through some hot summers with supplying energy for AC because of renewables.
Okay.
And they have, but how long will that last? That's what we'd like to find out. Who can predict that in a reasonable way? I don't know, but anyway, it is low-hanging fruit at the moment.
I really also object as an environmentalist in the long run, the blot on the landscape, the large footprint that all of these renewables are taking compared to the small footprint that fission would have. I'm not against them. I see that we're using them. I see that they're doing good, but I just am very reluctant to sell the public on this as a permanent solution. I guess that's just.
Well, I taken off from that, Dottie, is exactly what our mission is to make it. Now that the vast majority of the public is concerned about climate change and it knows that renewable energy helps it, and their tax dollars are helping renewable energy come along. We need to get the message clear that this is just a stopgap until fission power can come up to speed. Because we see that in Friends of Fission, where we talk about this stuff all the time, is that globally, fission is on the march. It definitely is, but it can't crank up as easily as cranking out solar panels and wind turbines. So it's the more renewables there are, it keeps people's mind on it, and I think it'd be easier to convert them to supporting fission power, with knowing that it's a sore point around Wisconsin when you got a 1,000-acre solar field for sure, and a fission power plant would take up a little tiny corner of that. And you need to let the people know that this is where you have good, clean, reliable, cheap power. And it always boils down to money too. It's like it can be vast and cheap and go all electric. So, we got two at once. We'll go with Richard first because Lou just spoke.
Okay, I have a request to put a slide up where my image is and see if it will take. It's a fascinating slide that enhances your position, Alan. Let me see if I can drag it up and put it right over my, no, it doesn't do it. Maybe if I open it.
Can I just say one thing while you're doing that?
There it is.
Richard?
I got it, Lou.
You got it?
Put the
Okay,
slide.
go
Let me
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is an interesting slide from Our World in Data going back to 2022. So it's not bad on time. What I want to point out to you is the carbon intensity. That is the carbon emissions of electricity in grams of CO2 equivalent emitted per kilowatt hour of electricity. Notice this is a ratio per.
We're not seeing it.
We're not seeing it.
You're not sharing the screen with us.
Oh dear. I'm so sorry because it shows
Sorry.
beautifully. Let me see if I can.
You're aren't you a co-presenter? You should be able to share
Well,
screen.
yeah, that's what I've got. Share. And
It's not showing up.
hang on. Maybe I'll.
Just one quick comment, and
Okay.
that is that
Sure.
the amount of natural gas that was putting emission, that one slide you had, second from the end, Alan, that the renewables, that would be way higher if it wasn't for renewables. I mean, that's another way to look at it. I mean,
Yeah.
but how long can that last where they can really they can't keep natural gas at bay for very long. I mean, that's going to be a tough sell there.
Yeah. Well, as I was kind of doing this in a rush this morning, I decided against trying to calculate out how many pounds of CO2 were saved by wind and solar, because it kind of depends on what they're offsetting, for one thing. And the second is with, terawatt hours worth of renewable energy sources in a year, and you kind of multiplying that times, let's say for an average two pounds per kilowatt hour, it turns into a number that's just off the chart and unimaginable. So trying to come up with a number that it's offsetting is tough. That's why I like the 1 pound per kilowatt hour for natural gas. You can see that if you just had a 1,000-watt solar panel that was producing that for a few hours a day, that's a few pounds of CO2 that isn't emitted. So it's something more you can wrap your head around. But on a global scale, and then there's a giant numbers, just how much CO2 is in the atmosphere, period. That's a really huge number. So
states like Wisconsin, where we are so dirty and so dependent on coal, we would actually benefit from having more of this renewable, interim energy, because we are worse than the rest of the nation in terms of our dependence on coal. I think that we're double, at least double. I forget the actual numbers. I just remember the magnitude, that we're a real outlier, and probably anything that we could do would be a benefit. Even if it's
Well, and there's some things that like Alliant Energy could do, and this is a personal issue for me. Is I have no solar panels on either of my homes. In Illinois, I can see the Byron nuclear power plant from my house. I have solar fields just down the street from me, so I'm getting some fairly clean energy here. In Wisconsin, in my Wisconsin house near Broadhead, I drive through a 400-acre solar field, and it's producing power during the day. But you know what? Alliant Energy gives me a discount on electricity for charging my electric car, which uses a lot of power, at night. I would love if they give me the same 7 cents a kilowatt hour rate during the day when I could charge off electricity made by the solar panels, because that one electric car uses far more electricity than all the rest of your house stuff does, unless you're running like electric resistance heating. I mean, your television and your stove and your refrigerator don't amount to anything near what an electric car sucks up. I put 25 kilowatts in my car last night here in Illinois, and there's no way we ran that much power through the rest of the house. So wouldn't it be nice to have it solar powered? They need to do something like that. But
just a clarification, you put in 25 kilowatt hours into your car.
Yeah.
When people confuse energy and power all the time, and I had scientists at Argonne who were great speakers, and they merged them together too. So
yeah,
it's easily done.
It's just a mouthful. It's just a mouthful to say kilowatt hours. Yeah.
Stephanie,
Anyway.
is Stephanie on still this morning?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Stephanie. Could you help me to share an image that I have taken from my photo collection? Is it possible?
Well, you are a co-host. So typically that's the only thing I ever need to do is to give people those privileges or rights. So do you see the green button at the bottom of your screen that says share?
Yes.
And so when you click on that, nothing's happening?
I see Notes, Microsoft, OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox. But when
Well, this would be on the bottom of your Zoom, the Zoom window where you have all of these different icons. And then there's like a green box that says share. It says share underneath and it has an arrow pointing upward.
Yep.
So yeah, normally if you just click on that, that's what
it gives me three options. One participant can share at a time. Multiple can share simultaneously. Maybe I should hit that one.
I just don't know. I don't know because I don't normally see that.
Why don't I try that one? Because
you can always email me the slide and I could share it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know otherwise.
Yeah. Why don't I try that? And let's see.
Yeah, you see, you don't want to hit the little caret. So I think I see what you're doing. You're hitting the caret. What if you just hit the green arrow itself? If you click on the green arrow and not the little caret next to it.
Just a minute. I got out of what I was doing now. I'm into email now already, so I may as well just carry on there and send it to you. I should email it to just PLATO?
info@platomadison.org.
Okay. Got that. And I don't need to put a subject. Maybe I better image 7518. Okay, and I'll drag that up there and send that. Just went to you.
Okay, and then in the meantime, if you want to just try clicking on that green arrow, and just see if that would work. Not clicking on the caret next to it, but the.
Okay, it gives me these three choices. Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Well, I just don't know why that's happening for you, but I will look for your image to arrive.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't seem to want to come up. I think it says a lot. It's a nice image, and I think it contributes a lot to what we've been saying. It gives a history over a period of time.
Okay, I just shared it. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, we could
Yes.
shrink it down a little bit. It's a little bit too enlarged. Great. A little more shrinkage. That's
Not
good.
so small.
Well, otherwise we can't see the title.
Oh, we can see the whole thing. There's,
Did we make it too small?
How about that?
yeah,
That's,
I
That's
think
good.
we could do that.
that's fine.
Okay,
That's good
carbon
right there.
intensity. This is called carbon intensity of electricity in grams of CO2 equivalents. Notice the word equivalents emitted per kilowatt hour of energy. So it's a ratio. And the point I'm trying to make is that looking over the past 20 years, 22 years, China has been trying to make a bit of a come down, even though, as we've been talking, they make a lot of solar panels. We're talking about energy, CO2 equivalent to the energy that's emitted per amount of electricity. So it has to do with the efficiency, as Dottie was saying, the concentration of energy. And you can see that China is getting some improvement. Germany also, although they burn a lot of biomass, they still seem to have done better than China. They're the gray line. Great Britain has come down pretty impressively here. I'm not quite sure why they've done so well, but what I wanted to point out, these other G7 countries are all pretty much in the middle. But look at France. Nobody gives them much credit, but for 22 years they've been way down here, and we all know that the reason for that, they don't have much in the way of gas and oil in France, and so back in the days of de Gaulle, they started to build nuclear reactors, which makes about 78% of their electricity. And you see how the carbon intensity there has been so efficient for decades. And I just wanted to make the point that that's the potential of nuclear energy here to achieve something, even though they're not very much well recognized for it. Their trains run on electricity. They've actually done away with most of the domestic airlines. They really made an accomplishment that the rest of the world could look at, including Germany. But just a comment that I think shows not just what's happening today in 2022, but what's been going on over 22 years. And in the case of France, decades before that. Any comments or questions on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why is Britain doing so well? We never talk about Britain. I'm just astonished. It's almost approaching France. I didn't think it had as much nuclear power. Why are they as clean as they are? Does anybody know?
I think
You
a
know,
lot of wind.
I would say one of the reasons is because the United Kingdom made a big, basically shut down coal in the country, and they're really relying a lot more on a mix of gas and renewables. And I would make a broader comment about this, which is we should be more optimistic, I think, in general, about the way things are going, because if you look at it, and I can show some, I'll show some of this data a little bit on in 2 weeks when I talk. But if you look at the increase of CO2, especially in the last 12 to 15 years, there's really a distinct difference in what's happened. So to put this in terms of numbers, for a long time, CO2 emissions have doubled within 30-year period. And in the last 12 years, that's actually gone up to about 100 years, doubling. And that may not seem like such a big deal, but it's an enormous accomplishment, quite frankly. And what it means is that if you look at some of the IPCC scenarios, it's the difference between having a 5-degree warming by the end of the century and a less than 3-degree warming. And that, quite frankly, is an enormous difference. Even though it sounds like a small difference in terms of the degrees, the influence on the climate is enormous. And I think so that flattening of the CO2 emissions is an enormous accomplishment, and it's going about a lot because of the shutdown of coal, the switch over to gas, and the influence of renewables. And I personally are an advocate of an all-the-above approach, that I'm not going to go start bad-mouthing any of the efforts that are coming into play to reduce CO2 emission. I think we need a combination of all of them. And quite frankly, and one of the things actually that I really like is I like Jesse Jenkins from Princeton, who basically really lays it out in a very nice engineering manner as to how to get CO2 emissions down. And what he shows, for example, in Net Zero America, is that you can do pretty well with renewables in the United States. But really what you need as well as the renewables is you need some firm baseload capacity. And that firm baseload capacity really lowers the cost of your electricity. So this is Jesse Jenkins from Princeton. And I think what that says is that to a large extent, you need something like fission. I would put in the plug for fusion when it becomes available. And anything else that provides you firm capacity so that you can get your CO2 emissions down and you can do it at lower costs. So I particularly would not want to get to a case where we're saying, just go all nuclear, people are brainwashed, you don't want them to get too used to renewables. I think we need a all hands on deck approach to this crisis.
I think we would all agree with that. I've heard nothing much but all hands on deck in most of the things that I'm reading. If you would like to send me if you have that a reprint of Jesse's work that you think could be sent around, I'd be glad to pass it around to the other members of our class.
Yeah,
That would be very
it's very nice. I've listened to a lot of. Are you familiar with Jesse's work?
Yes, he came to Madison and gave a talk.
Oh,
but
yeah, I was there. Were you there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought he was very good. Did you like his talk?
Very much.
Yeah, I thought I think he's one of the leading thoughtful. I like him because he's thoughtful. He doesn't take he's pro-nuclear. I always like to say he's pro-fission, he's pro-fusion, he's pro whatever it takes to get CO2 emissions down. And
Didn't he get? Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask that this slide be taken down if we're done with it? Because I can't see the rest of the people. Who's ever? I can only see 4 people. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. if we could send that around. Didn't he get sued by some of the pro-solar people out in California, and then the suit was dropped?
You mean, no, I think you're talking about Jacobson, Mark Jacobson. I think he sued people.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think, right, and I think, right, he sued a whole bunch of people. I can't, maybe Jenkins was one of them, I'm not even sure.
I think he was one of the recipients, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then of course
Well, it was dropped. He looked pretty bad, so he dropped the suit.
yeah, right. I like Jesse. He's
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I would appreciate that reprint. I might have clips from it, but I don't think I have it in the form that you might have it. So I'd be glad to send that around.
Oh, I've read a couple of his papers, and I think I just like his attention to detail. That he develops engineering codes that really evaluate what the possibilities are, rather than people who just talk and without the evidence to back up the statements. So so like I said, I think it's very good.
Thank you. Hey, can I just make one point that this came up, I think, in the last meeting. It came up somewhere. Still, if you want biofuels and renewable fuels still are necessary for aviation, and I don't know how you're not going to pull off aviation without it for a long time. I'm telling you, you better have something in the hopper for that, because
6%
commercial flights will have to.
6%.
And you know what?
Aviation.
Commercial what?
Aviation makes up 6%. I know it's important. I'll buy every little percent, but aviation is not the main thing to hit.
Well, it's a hard nut to crack, and they want it cleaner, just like the data centers and the AI people want everything cleaner too. But they should be cleaner.
The oceans can take nuclear reactors much better than airplanes can.
It's the local airports where the pollution gets really horrible from the takeoff, arrivals and takeoffs. And how do you clean that up? You got to clean it up.
Yeah, but my whole point is you can clean it up a lot easier if you clean up the maritime industry.
Yeah, Dottie's been trying to get in here. Come on, Dot.
Yes, Dottie.
I wanted to make a plug for renewables on a basis of equity around the world, not just in the United States. Even within the United States, there are plenty of niches where people still don't have any electricity or any reliable electricity, and small solar panels and wind sources and things like that are giving people in remote areas and in poor areas access, even if it's intermittent, to electricity. So in terms of an economic justice, I think we really have to celebrate that some people are finally getting a little bit of the share of the pie. And renewables can do that for them because it can be done on such a small and economical scale.
I completely agree. And we've all said, I've never heard anybody here say otherwise, all hands on deck. I've never seen a nuclear proponent dispute that. So I think we're with you on that, Dorothy. And I completely agree. There are people in Africa using solar panels to do significant amounts of business. And it's great that they have that. That's wonderful.
The Navajo Nation is finally getting some access to power so that they can have heated water. And, this is America, and we have people who don't have access to electricity. They don't have access to heating fuel. They just don't have access. And this is in our country, and they're ignored. So,
sure. Good point. Definitely. Good point, Dottie. Thank you. One little comment. The cost of electricity in Germany has doubled over the period that they've been pushing the renewables, so that not only are their emissions 5 times higher than France's, but their costs are twice as high. Just a little comment on that, but yes, I agree that we definitely need all sources of energy. And I think there's more and more data coming out that energy storage is going to become more important in the future. It's improving all the time, and that we shouldn't forget. We can't all be driving Bolts like dear Alan, our speaker, who has two of them.
Yeah. Well, you go back to the beginning of my presentation, and I said then when I was enlightened by seeing the wind turbines not turning and the sky cloudy. Well, us all here in the Midwest, that's normal to happen for weeks at a time. I mean, we can have a week of no wind and snowy days, and that puts renewables, even with storage capacity, in a bind. I mean, I don't think anybody's talking about building a battery capacity that can last for weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. So you got to have some other source to back that up. And currently that's mostly natural gas. Here in Illinois, we have a lot of nuclear, but we burn plenty of gas as well. So we might even have a few. Lou, do you know if we have any coal plants still running in Illinois? I think there are. Illinois has got a significant amount of coal downstate. So,
yes, I don't know the amount, but you have less coal than some states because of the high amount of nuclear in Illinois. It's what is it, 40% or something like that? 45% nuclear?
Yeah.
That's good. We're around 10% in Wisconsin due to one good plant. It's unfortunate that Steve Shellen isn't here today. He would be if he could, but he's been putting in lots of plugs for the plant that was built quickly and efficiently, and it's run very well. We hope he gets the renewal to go to 80 years. That would be very nice and should come through.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, Alliant Energy is really trying hard to cover the state with solar panels. Here in northern Illinois, I don't know what the company is that's doing it, but they are very aggressively putting up large solar fields all over northern Illinois. I mean, you can't keep track of them. I drive by some pretty regularly, and every time I turn around, I see more poles going in the ground to hold up ever more of them, everywhere from 10 acres to hundreds of acres. Can
you tell me?
I find that a bit sad because we have the best agricultural land on the planet, and I find that to be sad.
Can you stop and look at those, Alan, and sometime tell us, do those have automatically tilt toward the sun, or are they fixed? And if they're fixed, at what angle? Does it relate to the latitude of Wisconsin?
Most of the ones that I see have a tracking capability. Yes, they do move.
Oh, they do. Good.
Yeah. I think that there's been some technology changes that make it easy to do simple tracking. I think they just have basically timers running. They mount the panels on a long pole, and they got a motor that turns a whole bunch of them all at once. But
good.
It does. I had kind of a funny thought pop into my head the other day. One of the downsides of solar panels is when they wear out and they have to be disposed of, and currently recycling is not going all that well. Is why don't you put all the worn out solar panels in Yucca Mountain? We have a big hole in the ground already, and they want to put something in it. They put all the solar panels in there.
The last company I talked to in Maryland, they grind it up and put it in cement.
Yeah.
They think that's pretty cool.
Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think we're pretty close to an hour into this here, and we kind of seem to have kind of wrapped up. You want to call it a day here? And you know, it wasn't a very deep subject, but it's we all have our personal feelings about it. Let's just say that we all have our personal feelings, and you can't data your way out of this situation. What's going on? It's the renewables seem to have caught fire, literally, and are expanding ever more. So, you know, 10 years ago, you know, you'd see a few solar panels in people's yards, and now we're seeing thousands of acres across Wisconsin having solar panels. So it's you know, price driven, and if it keeps going down, we're going to just see more and more of it, I imagine. So apparently we don't need the corn. So anyway, want to wrap up, Richard? It's your whole thing, your sustainable pathways. So
I like your talk. I appreciate it. I gave a talk on solar panels on your rooftop, and you've taken it a step further to broaden it. And I think that's quite interesting. And of course, you've brought out also that we need to keep a broad approach and not exclude anything. We're going to need everything we can get to keep up with our needs, especially as we need more energy for so-called artificial intelligence and all of the other things that are coming down the pike.
yeah, and as we've had in other talks on this, is we talk an awful lot about the CO2 generated in the course of generating electricity here, but as we all know, it's one small slice of the CO2 emission pie. So there's a lot of other work to be done along this path to make a real big difference. I mean, we could go 100% clean energy and we'd still have a lot of CO2 emissions. So
Yeah.
we got our work ahead of us.
Yeah, we do. Well, thank you, Alan. I think that was a good talk. I appreciate it.
All right. Nice seeing y'all.
See you next week.
See you next week.